In 1942, a Viennese psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl was dragged into Auschwitz, and he came out 3 years later, having lost his wife, his parents, and everything he owned, except one idea. That idea became this book, half brutal memoir, half psychological theory, and it explains why some people survive unbearable pain, while others give up. By the end of this video, you'll understand Frankl's core discovery that finding a reason why matters more than comfort. And you'll have a simple tool for facing your own hard days. Before the war, Viktor Frankl was already a respected psychiatrist in Vienna, fascinated by why people's lives feel worthwhile or empty. When he was sent to Auschwitz, and later other camps, he lost his medical title, his name, and his identity, becoming just a number stitched onto rags. But he kept observing, almost like a scientist stuck inside his own experiment, watching how starving, exhausted people actually thought and behaved. That's why this book isn't just a sad story. It's Frankl smuggling notes on human psychology out of the worst laboratory imaginable. He wasn't trying to catalog Nazi cruelty. Plenty of books already did that. He wanted to explain the inner life of ordinary prisoners. Think of him as a war photographer who happens to also be a surgeon, capturing the scene but also diagnosing what's happening underneath it. Frankl noticed prisoners move through 3 distinct emotional phases, and the first was pure shock, that dazed disbelief right after arriving. Imagine stepping off a train, and within an hour, 90% of the people you traveled with are gone, sent straight to the gas chambers, and your mind simply can't process it, so it goes numb instead. The second phase, which lasted for most of the imprisonment, was apathy, a kind of emotional shutdown where prisoners stopped reacting to beatings, corpses, or hunger. This wasn't weakness, Frankl argued. It was the mind's armor, because feeling everything fully would be unbearable, so it feels almost nothing to keep functioning. The third phase came after liberation, and surprisingly, it wasn't instant joy. Many former prisoners felt hollow, unable to feel pleasure, like a light switch that had been off too long to flick back on. This taught Frankl something crucial, that extreme suffering doesn't just hurt you in the moment, it reshapes how you feel everything, even good news, for a while afterward. Frankl's biggest observation was this: it wasn't the strongest or healthiest prisoners who survived longest. It was the ones who had something to live for. He noticed men who lost all sense of future, all sense of purpose, would often die within days, not from disease, but from simply giving up, their bodies following their minds. On the other hand, prisoners who held on to a reason, a person waiting for them, a task unfinished, a book they still wanted to write, could tolerate horrors that should have crushed them. Frankl liked to borrow a line from the philosopher Nietzsche, that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how, and he saw that proven daily in front of him. This flips the usual assumption that happiness comes first, and meaning is a bonus. Frankl says meaning comes first, and it's what makes even suffering bearable. Picture 2 people carrying identical heavy backpacks up a mountain. One thinks it's pointless punishment. The other knows there's a person they love waiting at the summit. Same weight, totally different experience. The camp stripped away literally everything: clothes, names, food, even the right to walk freely. But Frankl insisted there was one thing the guards could never fully take. That's the freedom to choose your inner attitude toward what's happening to you. That tiny gap between an event smacking into you and how you decide to respond to it. He describes watching some prisoners, even while starving, quietly give away their last piece of bread or comfort someone else, choosing generosity when cruelty would have been easier and understandable. That single choice, Frankl says, proved that a human being can lose everything external and still decide who they are on the inside. It's like being shoved into a boxing ring you never agreed to enter. You can't control that you're in the ring, but you can still control how you hold your hands up. This idea became the seed of his whole theory, that meaning isn't something life hands you, it's something you actively choose to create. One of the most famous passages in the book describes Frankl trudging through freezing mud on a forced march, imagining conversations with his wife, even though he didn't know if she was alive. In his mind, he pictured her face so vividly that for a moment, the cold, the guards, and the exhaustion simply faded, and he realized love itself, even just the memory of it, could carry a person through torment. He argued that love isn't just a nice feeling, it's one of the highest things a person can experience, because truly seeing another person's inner worth changes how you experience everything else. Alongside love, Frankl noticed prisoners could still be stopped in their tracks by a beautiful sunset over the camp, or a joke shared quietly between friends. It sounds almost absurd, starving men admiring the sky, but that's exactly the point. Beauty and connection didn't require good circumstances to matter. They just needed a person still willing to notice them. Think of it like a single flower growing out of a crack in a concrete sidewalk. The ugliness around it doesn't erase the flower's beauty. If anything, it makes it more striking. Surprisingly, Frankl also talks about humor, noting that he and a friend made a habit of inventing at least one small joke every single day, even about their own miserable situation. That might sound impossible, but Frankl says humor works like a pressure valve for the mind, letting you step back from horror for just a second and see it from a distance instead of being crushed under it. He also describes prisoners caring for tiny personal rituals, saving a sliver of soap, trying to shave with a broken piece of glass, not for hygiene, but to feel human again for 1 minute. These weren't grand rebellions, they were small, almost invisible choices, but each one was a way of saying, I still decide something about my own life. It's similar to someone stuck in a miserable job who still keeps their desk tidy and their shoes polished, not because it changes the job, but because it keeps their sense of self intact. Frankl's point is that dignity isn't only preserved through huge heroic acts, it survives in these small, stubborn habits too. After the war, Frankl turned everything he'd witnessed into a formal system he called Logotherapy, therapy through meaning, built on the belief that our deepest drive isn't pleasure or power, but meaning itself. He called this the will to meaning, arguing that people don't just want to feel good, they need to feel like their life matters and adds up to something. Frankl laid out 3 main roads to finding that meaning. First, through work or creating something, like building a business or raising a child. Second, through love, deeply connecting with another person and experiencing their unique worth. And third, the most radical one, through suffering itself, by choosing how you face pain or loss that you cannot change, transforming a tragedy into a personal achievement of attitude. Crucially, Frankl believed meaning isn't something you invent out of thin air, like a fantasy. It's something you discover in your specific circumstances, almost like noticing a signal that was already there, waiting for you to tune in. Frankl noticed something strange after the war. Plenty of people living safe, comfortable lives were still deeply unhappy, and he called this the existential vacuum, a hollow feeling from having no sense of purpose. It's the modern student, with every opportunity available, who still feels lost, or the successful worker who has everything on paper, yet feels empty, scrolling through another evening. Frankl's advice flips the usual question. Instead of constantly asking, what do I want from life, he suggests asking, what does life want from me right now, in this specific moment? That small shift turns you from a passive complainer into an active responder, someone looking for the next task, relationship, or challenge asking for your attention. It's like being handed a letter addressed specifically to you. You don't get to pick whether it exists, but you absolutely get to choose how you respond to it. That, more than any single rule, is the lasting gift of this book. Meaning isn't found once and kept forever. It's something you choose to build again, every single day. Viktor Frankl survived the worst humanity has done to itself and came back with a simple, stubborn idea that you can lose everything except the freedom to choose your attitude and search for meaning. You don't need a concentration camp to use this lesson. You just need to notice the small moment right in front of you and ask what it's asking of you. If this kind of deep book breakdown helps you think differently, subscribe so you don't miss the next one.